The council chamber of the Xylos Confederacy hummed with a low, resonant vibration, the sound of countless mandibles clicking in quiet conversation. The representatives of a dozen spacefaring races were gathered, their forms as varied as the stars they called home. Tall, slender beings with iridescent skin stood beside stocky, quadrupedal creatures with thick hides. At the center of the grand circular hall, a holographic display shimmered, showing a blue and green planet, Earth. The atmosphere was one of condescending amusement. The topic of discussion was the newest species to stumble into the galactic community, humans. Ambassador Zilvix of the avian-like krill race, his feathers ruffled in a display of mirth, was the first to speak. "We have completed our preliminary observation of the species Homo sapiens. The findings are consistent with initial assumptions." He projected a series of images onto the display. Humans farming fields, tending to livestock, cooking food over open flames. "Observe," Zilvix continued, his voice a series of melodic chirps. "Their primary focus is on the production and preparation of plant matter and the flesh of docile, domesticated animals. They have no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no venom. Their hides are thin and easily punctured." A low, guttural laugh echoed from the corner where Ambassador Grack of the Threxian Empire sat. The Threxians were a proud predator race, their bodies covered in a natural chitinous armor, their hands ending in razor-sharp talons. "They are cattle," Grack boomed, his voice shaking the very air. "A species of prey. They spend their existence cultivating food because they are too weak to hunt for it. They are a race of farmers and chefs, not warriors." The other ambassadors murmured in agreement. A representative from the aquatic cephalid species pulsed with gentle bioluminescent light, projecting an image of a human barbecue. "Look at their ritual. They gather in groups and apply heat to dead flesh until it changes color. It is a ceremony of the utterly defenseless. They must cook their food just to make it digestible." "Herbivores," Grack sneered, the word dripping with contempt in the Threxian language. "The galaxy has no room for a species whose greatest achievement is the seasoning of a tuber. They will be a protectorate at best, a food source at worst. We have wasted our time with this observation." The data was filed away, but humanity was officially classified as a low-threat, pre-spaceflight species with a herbivore prey psychological profile. They were deemed harmless, useful only for their unexpected artistic talents or for trade in agricultural goods. The idea that they could ever pose a military threat was, to the assembled ambassadors, utterly laughable. This message of ridicule, however, was not private. It was part of a standard diplomatic data packet sent to all newly discovered species, outlining the galactic community's first impressions. When the packet reached Earth, humanity read every word. They saw the footage of their farms and their kitchens. They heard the translation of Grack's booming laughter and Zilvix's condescending chirps. The galaxy had looked at humanity and seen a herd of docile, tasty animals. And the reaction on Earth was not one of fear or shame. It was a slow, deep, and quiet kind of anger that settled into the bones of every person who saw it. They did not protest in the galactic forums. They did not send desperate pleas to be seen differently. Instead, a different kind of fire was lit. It was a fire that had been with humanity since they first learned to control it. And now, it was a fire with a purpose. The first sign that the galactic community had made a catastrophic error came in the form of a distress signal from a frontier trading post on a barren moon. The signal was not from a Threxian warship or a krill scout vessel. It was from a small, independent human freighter that had been attacked by the predatory Rakari, a species of spaceborne scavengers known for picking off unarmed civilian ships. The Rakari were confident. Their ship was a twisted mass of sharpened metal and organic growth, designed to latch onto prey and tear it apart. They had identified the human ship as a perfect target, slow, lightly armed by galactic standards, and crewed by the galaxy's newest and most docile species. They broadcast a taunting message filled with clicks and screeches, promising a slow and painful end. The human ship, the non-stop, did not run. It did not beg. It turned to face the predator. Inside the Rakari vessel, the scavengers were confused. The prey was not behaving correctly. The human ship's engines flared, not with the cold energy of their own drives, but with a raw, dirty chemical burn. It was primitive. And then, the human ship did something no other species in the galaxy would ever think to do. It accelerated directly towards them at a speed that was suicidal. The Rakari pilot had a split second to register the change in the human ship's trajectory before the nonstop did not just fire a weapon, it became one. The freighter's reinforced hull, built to withstand the crushing pressures of oceanic worlds, plowed into the Rakari vessel at a velocity that turned kinetic energy into a devastating force. The scavenger ship crumpled like paper. But the real terror was just beginning. As the two ships tumbled in a tangled wreck, the Rakari who survived the impact found themselves boarding the human ship, expecting an easy kill of the dazed crew. They were met by a nightmare. They had seen humans as prey. They did not understand that humanity's relationship with fire was not just for cooking, and they had spent millennia learning to control it, to shape it, to weaponize it against everything from wild animals to each other. The humans on the non-stop didn't have advanced plasma cutters or laser rifles. They had something far more terrifying: ingenuity born of desperation and a complete lack of rules in a fight for their lives. They used pressurized canisters of industrial lubricant and a simple spark to create makeshift flamethrowers that filled the corridors with searing heat. They jury-rigged their ship's power couplings to turn hand tools into Dianhu welders that could melt through chitin. They used the very chemical rockets that the galaxy mocked as primitive to create explosive charges. The Rakari, used to clean, clinical kills with their claws, were utterly unprepared for the sheer, brutal chaos of a human close-quarters brawl. They were burned, electrocuted, and blown apart by devices that looked more like plumbing repairs than weapons. The sounds that echoed from the human ship were not the screams of prey, but the roar of fire and the battle cries of a predator that had just realized its true nature. When a Xylos patrol ship finally responded to the automated distress beacon, they found a scene that defied explanation. The Rakari vessel was a derelict, torn open and lifeless. The human ship, the non-stop, was heavily damaged but still intact. Its captain, a woman named Eva Rostova, simply transmitted a single line of text to the stunned Xylos officer. "The herd fights back." This single incident was a spark. But it was quickly followed by a wildfire. The Threxian Empire, driven by its predatory instincts and contempt for the herbivore humans, decided to test their mettle. A small but heavily armed Threxian raiding party attacked a human agricultural colony on a world called New Eden. They expected a quick, brutal harvest of slaves and resources. They expected the humans to flee or surrender. They found the streets empty. The colony was quiet. As the Threxian warriors advanced into the main plaza, their thermal sensors finally picked up life signs. But they weren't running away. They were everywhere. In the buildings, in the sewers, below them. The ground erupted. The humans had not built a farm. They had built a fortress, and the entire planet was their killing field. They used the planet's geography against the invaders. They collapsed tunnels, ignited methane pockets, and used the very agricultural equipment the galaxy mocked them for as terrifying weapons. Modified threshers became armored personnel carriers. Plasma torches used for welding were turned into close-range weapons. Their knowledge of the local flora and fauna, a necessity for farmers, allowed them to poison water supplies and lead the Threxians into the territories of native, even more dangerous predators. The battle for New Eden was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. The Threxians, with their chitinous armor and natural claws, were the apex predators of their world. But they had never fought an enemy who didn't care about honor, who didn't follow the unwritten rules of predator-prey engagement. The humans fought with a terrifying, desperate intelligence. They set traps, they used decoys, and they never stopped coming. When the Threxian reinforcements finally arrived, they found their elite warriors broken and scattered. The human colonists stood amidst the wreckage of the Threxian war machines, their faces smeared with soot and the blue blood of their enemies. They had not used fancy energy weapons. They had used fire, steel, and an unyielding will to survive. They had seared the flesh of the predators who had come to devour them. Galactic news of the New Eden victory spread like a virus. The Xylos Council was forced to reconvene, but this time the atmosphere was not one of amusement. It was one of shock and a dawning, terrifying realization. Ambassador Zilvix's feathers were now flat against his body, his earlier mirth a distant, embarrassing memory. He projected the new data, his chirps hesitant. The humans have demonstrated a capacity for violence that is inconsistent with our initial profile. Inconsistent? Grak roared, slamming a taloned fist on his console. His earlier boasts were ashes in his mouth. They butchered a Threxian honor guard with farm equipment. The cephalid ambassador pulsed in a pattern of deep, anxious violet. Our analysis of their history is now complete. We accessed their planetary data networks. We made a critical error in our initial assessment. We saw their farms and their kitchens. We did not see the context. He projected a new series of images onto the central hologram. The images were not of peaceful farmers. They were of terrible global wars, of cities in flames, of weapons of unimaginable destructive power, of battlefields littered with the dead. And throughout their history, the cephalid continued, his voice a low, resonant hum, humanity has been its own worst predator. They have fought wars that have spanned their entire globe. They have developed weapons capable of extinguishing all life on their planet. They hunted the largest and most dangerous creatures on their world to extinction, not for food, but for sport. Their capacity for violence is not a recent development. It is the very core of their being. The council was silent. The image of the barbecue flickered in a corner of the display, a stark contrast to the scenes of global devastation. They cook their food, the cephalid said slowly, because for most of their history, raw meat was a vector for disease in their weak digestive systems. They developed agriculture because it was more efficient than hunting the megafauna they had already killed off. They did not evolve as prey. They are a species of apex predators who, having no natural enemies left on their own world, turned their predatory instincts inward upon themselves. Their history is not the story of prey learning to survive. It is the story of the galaxy's most dangerous predator taking a very, very long nap. Grak stared at the images of human warfare, a cold dread seeping into his bones. He saw the look in the eyes of the human soldiers in the ancient footage. It was the same look he saw in the eyes of the colonists on New Eden. It was not the desperation of prey. It was the cold, calculating focus of a predator. They do not fight for territory or for food as we understand it, the cephalid concluded. They fight for ideas, for beliefs, for revenge. They fight with a fervor that is entirely irrational and utterly terrifying. We called them herbivores. We laughed at them for searing their food. But we failed to understand the most important thing. A creature that has mastered fire, that has used it to reshape its entire world, that has used it to destroy its own kind. That creature does not cook because it is weak. It cooks because it has learned to control the one thing in the universe that cannot be controlled. And now they have turned that fire on us. The council chamber was filled with a silence deeper than the void between stars. The laughter was gone. The mockery was over. They had looked at a sleeping giant and called it a lamb. And now the giant was awake. And the galaxy was about to learn the true meaning of a predator that fought with flame-seared fury.